history, and politics, we are at the desk. Welcome back. I'm your host, Gracie Polovich. In tonight's premiere episode of Season 4, the politics panel will explore some recent developments in the political world. We will be discussing the assassination of conservative influencer Charlie Kirk, and the crime panel will discuss the shocking case of a high school catfish. Now, come take a seat with us at the desk. Welcome back to ATD. First, it's time.
We should be rolling the intro, right?
The intro video should be in the system right now.
Okay.
It is rolling.
Okay, the intro is rolling.
Yes, the intro goes. And then you go back on.
Yeah, there.
Welcome back to ATD. First, it's time to send it over to the politics panel to discuss the recent political violence seen around the world. Over to you, Ryan.
Thanks, Gracie. Welcome back to At the Desk Politics. Tomorrow will mark 1 week since the assassination of right-wing influencer Charlie Kirk. The panels today will be discussing political violence in America before wrapping up with a look at the New York City mayoral race. But first, I want to welcome our new panelists, Vita and Sam. Vita, let's start with you. What do you think the most recent rise in political violence says about our current climate?
Well, after last week's shooting, there has been undeniable controversy that has been sparked and a lot of discussion revolving gun violence and what our government and leaders are saying, leaving Americans to question if this assassination will essentially unify the country or divide it even further.
Yeah, I think a point that you just said is the unification, and I was hoping after this that it was going to unify the country, but it seems like the political rhetoric is just picking up, and there's even more division with pointing fingers. Is it the left or is it the right?
My turn. Hello, everyone. We're back, which is awesome. Very excited to be back. Jackson, thanks for doing this with us again, and Ryan, and welcome, guys. I'm really excited to get started. And it's tough that we're talking about Charlie Kirk. Honestly, it's tough that we're talking about Charlie Kirk or any political assassination to begin with. It's really sad. Of course, I feel for the family. We have the facts here. We do know that all government operatives were cooperating with the investigation, and that actually the gentleman who was not yet found guilty, but found to probably have done the crime is Tyler Robinson, 22 years old, a Utah resident, as a matter of fact. And the information about him that we have is very limited because the authorities have been saying he hasn't really been cooperating very well, which is unfortunate for the investigation. But we do know that the family of the individual, Tyler Robinson, has been cooperating with authorities, and more is going to roll out as the court case just started today.
Yeah, so I can't say I'm surprised that this shooting did cause a more division in the country. I mean, the right immediately went to blame the left immediately went to blame the right. They made it about gun control, things like that. I really hope, though, that, the next few months, people start to realize that this is more than just about politics, and it's also about humanity. I mean, a man was killed, a family lost their husband, lost their father. So I think that it's a tragedy for sure, and I really hope that they're able to get more information out of the shooter, because once we find out his motives, then we can maybe address the issue that was there, because we really don't know anything for sure right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just difficult because, like you guys said, this was the chance for there to be a call for unity. If you remember a year ago when Donald Trump was shot, Biden immediately had an address where he talked about bringing down the rhetoric, toning it down. Did that exactly happen afterwards and lead up to the election? Not quite. But Donald Trump had the opportunity to do the same thing, and it just kind of seems like right now he's fanning the flames. He's saying that most of the lunatics within politics are on the left, or that the left are terrible, disgusting people, things like that on his Fox News appearances. That it's just the kind of rhetoric that led to a situation like this.
And also, Donald Trump did kind of dismiss the question about Charlie Kirk, started talking about the White House ballroom construction, kind of just brush thing under the rug, which makes me a little bit suspect that he might have had something to do with it. Just floating the idea.
Wow.
I'm just saying that it was a little bit strange that because Charlie Kirk was a very close ally to Trump. He was a big reason why he won the election. So I do find it very strange that Trump didn't make this a bigger issue than he actually did. Vance made it more of an issue than Trump did, honestly.
This is the cliffhanger of this season, is that Jackson, we're going to see him a little bit less Trump is something that he's been telling us, which will be interesting.
Well, I'm just being honest here. That's all I have to say.
I was not a fan of how he talked about the ballroom. I was also not a fan of Trump taking the messenger-in-chief role in this whole investigation. I don't think it's his job to be reporting if they think they have the suspect. I don't think D.C. should be talking about what's going on in Utah. If anything, I don't even think the governor really should, but in some cases, some head-on governors would do that. I think that this investigation really should be left up to the local authorities. Obviously, the FBI can offer their help as well, but this was a local case. It was deemed a political assassination by many, which means that the FBI can get involved and federal crimes could, but it looks like we're going to be rolling with the state charges right now is what I'm hearing.
I will say, I think that it was an incredibly unique situation because although Charlie Kirk did not necessarily have a formal role in government, he was definitely somebody very close to Trump and a political activist and somebody who had a definitely unique role in society, specifically on college campuses. So I do think that maybe that's why this was dealt with in a very unprecedented way.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is pretty important to note, though, this is just one of the slew of political violence that we've seen in this country.
Definitely.
In the past couple of years.
Couple of years, since 2024, I believe that it has almost doubled. We've seen, in the summer, Minnesota, 2 people. We had Representative Melissa Hortman. She was gunned down. And then also the state senator, John Hoffman. We've had the arsonist with Josh Shapiro. We had Steve Scalise, the majority leader, for the second time be gunned down, one in 2017 and now again. So, I mean, it's an issue on both sides of the aisle, but it is not new. It is not something that is new. And something that I want to say is I think the American public is almost numb to this. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a sad reality, that as much headlines as Charlie Kirk got this year or this week, the fact is this isn't staying in the headlines for long. We've mentioned the ballroom. We're already moving on. Hartman and Josh Shapiro, it wasn't even a headline past the second day. So when it comes to the American people, it's a sad reality right now that we live in, that this is just normal.
I mean, it's normal now, and now we're just, with another instance like Kirk, we're just even more desensitized to it.
So what do we sorry, go ahead.
And it's not, I don't want to fearmonger and say, it's going to get worse, but it doesn't seem like there's anything's going to change in the current climate where things tone down.
I'm seeing something interesting. I'm seeing not necessarily people getting attacked for what they've been saying about Kirk, but people actually losing their jobs.
Yes.
We saw someone, obviously a former ABC News consultant who was also with MSNBC and who worked in the Bush-Cheney campaign, interesting enough, Matthew Dodd. He was fired. Clemson University fired 2 professors, as well as Coastal Carolina, who just fired 1 professor. And then the United States Secret Service actually put someone on what's going to look like permanent leave, I believe, for his social media post. Is this silencing, or is this the right thing to do is the question?
Well, the Washington Post, they just fired a reporter for tweeting things that Charlie Kirk had said himself. Mm-hmm. And it looks just more like silencing, because last night when Vance went on to Charlie Kirk's podcast, he told people, if you see people celebrating his death, call their employer. And you see these online social media movements by the right now where they're doing just that. So the side that once was just angered over cancel culture kind of seems to be having their own cancel culture moment as well.
I don't disagree with what you guys are saying. With that being said, the celebration of somebody's death is quite odd. No matter what you believe in, whether you're conservative, whether you're liberal, there is no room for political violence in this country. And the fact you might disagree with him, but if you're going to go out, there's people celebrating, there's people dancing, that rubs me the wrong way. Should they be fired? I'm not sure, but should they be reprimanded? Probably, because that's somebody's husband, that's somebody's father. At the end of the day, people looked up to him, and I think all of us need to go, that is wrong, and make an example out of them, right, wrong, or indifferent about being fired. But an example needs to be made that being comfortable with celebrating someone's death, that's just wrong.
I agree with that. I 100%
Ryan,
agree with that.
Yes, they should be morally reprimanded in the same way they did like the same way what they said on the internet. Someone should say something to them as opposed to trying to get them fired or even like arrested. I say it should be done to the same degree that they did something, like maybe not like more. Yes.
And just to clarify, were those people that were fired, were they celebrating his death?
No, the one I mentioned specifically, the Washington Post reporter was not celebrating his death. She was retweeting statements that Kirk himself had made.
Matthew Dowd, I wouldn't necessarily say was celebrating his death. He was more just asking questions, which is something that RFK Jr. likes to do. But we're not going to get down that rabbit hole. But I do 100% agree that that probably should not have been spoken about at that time.
A beat writer for the Phoenix Suns also made his criticisms of Charlie Kirk online, and he was quickly fired by his organization as well.
I agree that it's probably self-censorship would be appropriate here. It would be.
I suppose, but I think you can respect that a man has died and that a man did not deserve to die while also being knowledge and criticisms about who he was when he was alive. I think two things can be true in this situation.
And you're right, but when someone's as polarizing as him, people are going to have such divided opinions. But again, we can retweet about what he said, and is everything that he said agreeable? No, definitely not. But his sole purpose at the end of the day about starting Turning Point USA and going to college campuses was to have those disagreements and then see if there could be any middle ground. So even if you don't agree with his opinions, he was trying to come from a place of just getting people involved, spreading politics. And, he's a conservative. So yeah, he's going to say conservative things. But at the end of the day, he wasn't trying to come for people in a malicious way.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a question for Jackson. The FBI took a couple of days to get this guy, and it was only off the tips of his own family members. Do you think that they did a sufficient job in this investigation?
I mean, they have a suspect in custody. I believe it could have happened faster. But again, I don't know all the details. This has been very secretive. So I don't know how well he hid or how well.
You should also know they contacted the local authorities. They didn't contact the FBI. The FBI spent, I wouldn't say millions of dollars, but they spent a lot of effort on this investigation. They didn't get him.
Yeah, the fact of the matter is they have him in custody now, and he's not really complying yet. His family is a little bit, but he's kind of just like being quiet and not saying what he thinks. So it's kind of hard to tell what his true motivation is. So I really don't have an opinion on it because I don't know enough, or nobody really knows enough unless you're a member of the government. So it's really hard to say right now.
I think Vita mentioned, though, the unique nature of this assassination. And, we look at the assassinations, the big assassinations from the American time. Obviously, we have Lincoln and JFK and McKinley and Arthur, and all of them were the most prominent figures. They were the presidents of the United States. But this time, there's so much video to unpack and uncover. And, if you're someone who scrolls on Twitter a lot, there's a bunch of people that have a bunch of conspiracies. And I won't go into that. But the investigation, there's so much more information to look at, which makes this a lot more unique because of the amount of camera angles. The amount of people videoing at this time was quite interesting, that you have literally a 360 view of this assassination.
It's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. But I wanted to move on real quick to talk about the current New York City mayoral race. Mamdani looks like the clear shot winner right now. What do you think this says about the current current Democratic Party?
I mean, I think that they're definitely in an interesting spot right now because the Democratic Party right now is considered to be weak. There seems to be somewhat of a lack of support that could be definitely argued with Senators Chuck Schumer and Kristen Gillibrand, who haven't endorsed him. But there also has been the governor of New York who recently did endorse him, and that definitely seemed to ruffle a lot of feathers in the White House. So I think although this is something that can definitely unite Democrats or possibly divide them even further, it seems to be like Mamdani has a strong support system behind him. And I would argue that he has a clear path to victory.
I think you have to ask, though, as the Democratic Party, he has a lot of socialist views. So supporting someone with a lot of socialist views begs the question, is that the path that this entire party is going to go down? Like you mentioned, it is weak. There's not a clear-cut leader. Chuck Schumer really isn't a prominent leader, and Hakeem Jeffries has not done a great job as the minority leader in the House. So when you look at someone who has these grand socialist ideas, you got to ask the question, is this best for the Democratic Party? even in a victory, do some representatives stay out of this and not give the full endorsement because maybe they think he's going to win and then they can move on from him after?
It's just they've only gotten so far from catering to moderates.
I was going to say that when something is broken, you either try to fix it or you get rid of it. So the Democratic Party, neoliberalism, if you want to call it that, they lost this last election in arguably a landslide, and so they're in a desperate place right now. So they're willing to try pretty much anything, including democratic socialism, which is, of course, what I would classify Zoran Mamdani as. But yeah, I have a lot of respect for Zoran Mamdani. He's running a good campaign. He knows how to appeal to the youth. I don't agree with him on a ton of things. However, he is doing what he needs to do to win. And once he does win, he has a chance to prove himself. But Democrats are going to be willing to try that kind of politics because nothing else is working right now. And that's what I think is going on in the Democratic Party.
All right, sadly, that's all the time we have for today. If one thing is for sure, so with the constant headlines coming out of the White House, we will have no shortage of content to talk about this season. We at ATD Politics will be with you to analyze these unprecedented times week by week. Back to you, Gracie.
Thank you, Ryan. Now, let's head over to Shay to give us the rundown of the assassination of conservative political figure Charlie Kirk.
We did way
That
too
was
much.
great.
We did way too much
Yeah, we-
Charlie
yeah,
Kirk.
that's
though.
Charlie-
Thanks, Shay. It's now time to head to the crime panel to discuss the disturbing text messages that a young high school student received. Over to you, Savannah.
Thanks, Gracie. What started as a disturbing, relentless, and anonymous text messages quickly escalated into a 2-year nightmare. Teen Lauren Kari and her boyfriend, Owen McKinney, were harassed with cruel and threatening messages, tormenting the young couple and affecting their everyday lives. For months, the culprit behind the screen remained a mystery. Investigators pursued every lead imaginable as the text messages got worse. But when law enforcement finally discovered the truth, the answer was more shocking than anyone could have ever imagined. The culprit, Lauren's own mother, Kendra Licari. Kendra was exposed as the mastermind behind the whole operation against her own daughter. Ultimately, she pleaded guilty to stalking a minor and was sentenced in 2023. Today, we're going to dive deeper into the case, talking about the lies, investigations, and how a mother became her own daughter's worst enemy. Now, when this case dropped, when the Netflix documentary came out, the first thing everyone wondered was, how could a mother do this to her own daughter? Now, some of the text read, it's obvious he wants me. He no longer likes you and hasn't in a while. And this started when she was just 13 years old, which is such an impactful and impressionable age. And everyone's wondering what led up to this? What could have possibly been going through her mind? Kara, can you tell us a little bit about the timelines and a bit of the background about this case?
Yeah, so first off, ladies, good to be back.
Yes.
Good to see everyone again. Super exciting. So like you said, Lauren was 13 when these text messages first started in October of 2020. Her and her boyfriend, Owen, at the time, they've since broken up. They received text messages from an unknown number that kind of exhibited a lot of the harassment that you just spoke about. However, the text messages took a break. There were a couple in October of 2020 and then there was a pause, and then into September of 2021, they continued, and then said that they had continued for, it was a little over a year, about 15 months, basically. And they had absolutely no idea who it was. I know that originally, the family first actually reported the harassment to the school in 2021, kind of as the text messages came back in September. And then they went and they steered them over to the Isabella Police Department and told them to put in like a crime report, basically for like stalking and harassment, things like that. But other than that, I mean, you talked about it. She's already been sentenced and everything like that. I know there's some more pieces to the puzzle here, but Sophia, I know that you kind of wanted to dive the basic timeline. You wanted to go a little bit more into the story about kind of some more of the psychological background of this.
Yeah, definitely. So as we've established, it was revealed that Kendra, Lauren's mom, was the culprit behind the text messages. However, she claims she didn't send the initial text that started in October of 2020, but she wanted to get to the bottom of it. So she decided to start sending texts to see if that would help expose the real sender. But authorities don't support this story. They think she's the one that's been sending the text messages from the beginning. And of course, after watching the documentary, many have wondered, why did she do this to her own daughter? How could she do this to her own daughter? But when questioned, Kendra explained that she was sexually assaulted at 17 years old, and she was fearful that the same thing would happen to Lauren. So she felt that by sending the texts, she was protecting her, and it was almost like a coping mechanism. Others believe she had a crush on Lauren's boyfriend, Owen, which fueled her to ruin their relationship, which the text, it worked, that she did. But Kendra claimed that it was like a snowball effect, and she let it consume her. Once she started, she didn't know how to stop. After studying the case, experts have said that Kendra suffers from cyber Munchausen's by proxy. This is a digital version of Munchausen by proxy, which is when a parent fabricates an illness for sympathy or attention. However, instead of fabricating a medical illness, Kendra was abusing her daughter emotionally as a tactic to keep her close.
Yeah, something I find really interesting about this is when Lauren found out what her mom was doing, she stayed by her mom's side.
Yeah.
I don't know about any of you guys, and I don't think anyone would know until they're in that situation. But if I found out my mom was texting me to kill myself, texting me that I'm going to get censored, so I'm not going to say that. But texting very sexual messages to her daughter about her boyfriend.
Yeah.
How could anybody stay there and sit there and support their mom in that situation? I mean, that is what's most crazy to me. I mean, there's Stockholm Syndrome. We see that a lot in cases of sexual and domestic abuse and violence, that kind of victims stay with their perpetrator.
Yeah.
So it could be something like that. But that's what I found the most interesting about this case was the daughter stayed. And she's still, now that the mom's like done with prison and everything.
She's been released, yeah.
She's been released. The daughter is still talking to her mother, which I find really, really, really
Little
shocking.
strange, yeah.
Yeah.
And in the documentary, she was quoted as saying, "That's still my mother." But I think that the nature of those messages, just how explicit and openly vulgar they were, is just obvious proof that the authorities were right about her diagnosis. And this, I think she kind of fabricated this excuse with her wanting to get to the bottom of it. I personally do not believe that, just because of how vulgar the messages were.
And I think what's even crazier is how Kendra tried to downplay her crimes. One quote that stuck out to me from the documentary, I actually wrote it down, was every single one of us makes mistakes. Not a single one of us has lived a perfect life. And realistically, a lot of us have probably broken the law at some point or another and not got caught. So it's like, even after you've been caught, you've been sentenced to prison, you're still trying to justify your actions. You're still trying to find excuses.
Absolutely.
And it's just like mind-blowing to me.
No accountability.
No accountability with that.
To sit and say, everyone perhaps, has maybe broken a law or two. There's a difference between maybe jaywalking, maybe littering, some trash falls out of your pocket, versus knowingly harassing and stalking. She was charged with stalking a minor, harassing, bullying her daughter for literally over a year and doing it like willingly as well, because these reports said that like how she got caught in the first place was because the FBI came in with a search warrant and they tracked the IP address from the messages to her own phone. You're sitting there with your phone in your pocket. You got the messages in your pocket. She's sending them, probably throughout any part of the day. It said there were as many as between 40 to 50 texts in a day, just that constant harassment. I'm sorry, but that a mistake?
Yeah,
Come on.
It's not a mistake. This was a premeditated thing.
Absolutely.
The mom also described when she was doing it, she didn't feel like she was in her own body. She didn't feel like herself. I'm sorry. She didn't feel like herself for the year that it was going on.
Absolutely.
When she sits at home at night going to sleep, she didn't feel like herself. Like, please.
Yeah, she even went as far as to download a third-party app called Pinger, and this constantly generates new phone numbers. So it's impossible to trace, it's impossible to block. But she obviously fully thought all of this out. It wasn't just someone taking over her body.
And think about the impact. So this happened when she was obviously super little. How has this impacted her future relationships? Maybe even how she sees herself. Her mother said some terrible things about her self-image and just completely dragging her down. And that's coming from what she finds out is a family member. How does she view herself? How is she able to live and move forward with this?
And I also want to know, this didn't just terrorize her own daughter. This terrorized her daughter's boyfriend at the time, terrorized many people in the school district.
Absolutely.
Many young girls were being accused of sending these messages. What do you think that does to their mental health? And what do you think that does? And the mom was going into the school, kind of working with law enforcement and authorities when she knew she was behind this the entire time.
It's just, and it's so much of it honestly is very, it doesn't make sense. And honestly, it seems like it doesn't really make sense to Kendra either. Based on like what I read and what I watched in the documentary is that she didn't really have that kind of immediate strike of remorse when she got caught. She wasn't like, oh my gosh, I did do this. I'm so sorry. I didn't feel like myself. I don't know what's wrong with me. She was really, again, she was trying to downplay what she did. She was kind of trying to bury it, trying to hide it, trying to excuse it. And I mean, to me, and obviously it's Lauren's decision to still stand by, her mom. And I understand that is her family, that is her personal choice, but Lauren was there. She kind of obviously, it said that, when her mother was like released and she decided to be a part of the documentary, she, producer said she watched everything her mother said. She saw her mother on set saying these things and saw kind of the like recount of how she basically tried to lie to the police and be like, what? I didn't do this. Like the fact that you see someone with lacking that much just remorse and love and respect. It's just clearly, I think there's obviously something more than just I made an error.
Right. And I want to circle back to what we had talked about before. There were actually other girls accused before her mother. And think about the trauma that those people had to endure because they were being accused of this terrible crime.
Yeah. This is just a horrible situation. And I'm scared for the future. The mom's back in Lauren's life. What is she going to do? What is she going to do? She's obviously has some sort of mental issues, whether diagnosed or undiagnosed. What could she possibly do next?
Yeah.
And I think, is it for authorities to go in and make sure that everything's okay?
Mhm.
Is it for, them to make sure they're separated? I don't know, but I'm scared of what she could possibly do in the future.
And I feel like another question that a lot of people are asking after watching the documentary is, how did Kendra have the time to send all of these texts all day, every day? Like, what was her job? What was she doing every day? And another interesting aspect of the case is Kendra was actually lying about her job the entire time. Everyone around her thought that she left her job in human resources at Central Michigan University and took a new job at Ferris State University for a pay raise. However, in reality, she was let go from her original job due to performance issues, and her new job did not have any pay raise. So then 2 years later, she wound up quitting her job at Ferris State University, but she continued to take work calls and work emails in front of her family, which were obviously fake.
Absolutely.
And it just shows that she was lying to every single person in her life about every aspect of her life. Like, she was living a double life.
She wanted to be kind of her daughter in a way. Her daughter was popular. Her daughter had a nice looking boyfriend. I think she wanted to live her daughter's life because of maybe the abuse that we had talked about. Her childhood might have been taken away from her a little bit. She wanted to kind of be in her daughter's shoes.
And I think another super messed up part of this is she in the documentary said she would love it when her daughter would come in and cry to her. She would sit there and cry to her mother about what was happening. And I think so one of the things she was charged with was stalking. And I think that goes back to what you said about her living this double life and kind of wanting to live out her life as her daughter in a sense.
Yeah, and her daughter's boyfriend, which is crazy. A grown woman was making these comments about a young boy.
Yeah, 13, 14.
I mean, that's a whole nother issue in and of itself. So
absolutely.
I think it's crazy.
Yeah, Owen's mom even says, my theory is that she was obsessed with my son. Like, there are people that knew her personally that really stick to that theory, which is just disturbing.
And also, now that the documentary's out on Netflix, I mean, we've all seen it. It is all around TikTok, all around social media. What does that do to Lauren's life? What does that do to her boyfriend's life for the future? I mean, we could say that they got justice because the mom went to prison, but did they really get justice when their lives are, I mean, obviously they consented to the documentary being made, but that's going to stay with them for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a way they did consent to the documentary to try to make something positive out of the terrible that happened.
Bring some
awareness. And I think the documentary did a really good job with bringing awareness.
It really did.
And, just being like, hey, these are some signs you could possibly look for with people really close to you.
Yeah. I think that's why it went viral, is because usually, it's a friend, it's a boyfriend, but their own mother, I'd never personally seen anything like that. I was watching the documentary trying to guess what girl it was, and here it is, the mother.
I just can't believe that Kendra even agreed to be on the documentary. I mean, it's so rare that the perpetrator is interviewed and they're agreeing to be interviewed on the documentary. So it was crazy to me that she even agreed to begin with.
Well, she had to have known that the world wouldn't like her very much after this. She had to have had some idea that, hey, maybe I'm not going to come across as super likable right now to America.
Yeah. I think just based on clearly just the pattern of manipulation and lies and deceit that we have seen thus far, obviously, as we've said, I feel like it is clear there is some type of underlying mental health issue. Terribly unfortunate. I really hope, now that she's served her time and she's out, hopefully maybe she can work towards getting the help that she needs. But her going on the documentary was clearly just an extension of that manipulation.
Right, exactly.
She wanted to be in control of her own narrative. She wanted to be the one telling her own choices and decisions in order to control how they were perceived by the public and how they were perceived by her daughter, which clearly was probably the way that she wanted, considering, as we mentioned, they are still in contact.
Yeah, the vision of her telling her daughter all of these things and didn't really cry.
No.
She kind of not had a smile on her face, but it was almost a sense of pride in a way. I don't know if you guys felt that too when watching it, but it was like, oh, I did all these things. I do feel bad, but at the same time,
do I really?
Do I really? Yeah.
She probably feels bad she got caught.
100%.
Yeah. That's I completely agree with you. And I think honestly, I mean, she said that she was only to be sentenced between 19 months and 5 years in prison. She only served about 2 years, which, I mean, sure, okay, technically that's within the window, but still inappropriate.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. This case is a shocking reminder that sometimes the threats don't come from strangers, but the people closest to us. Back to you, Gracie.
Thanks, Savannah. And thank you for tuning in with us. That is all for our show tonight. In the meantime, stay updated with ATD on all our socials at PSU at the desk. And let us know what you want to see us cover next. I'm Gracie Polovich, and we will see you back at the desk next week.